I want to take you back to the beginning so that you can understand the game that the Prime Minister is playing and the detriment to which the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I take you back to June 2010 when the issue was raised that it was unexpected and unacceptable that a member of the cabinet would be allowed to hold an executive position in an organization or agency or company. It happened to be that on that occasion, reference was being made to the appointment of Mr. Warner as a member of the cabinet, in that case Minister of Works and Transport, while he held on to executive position at the international body which manages to call FIFA. We raised this as a matter of principle because we understood that development to be a violation of the parliamentary code of ethics, a matter which was discussed in the parliament, which was known to the Prime Minister because she was a member of parliament when it came up. It was made clear by the mover of the motion that it's not a matter of law, it's a matter for the people of Trinidad and Tobago who will adjudicate on the conduct of parliamentarians, particularly cabinet ministers, if this code of ethics was breached. I raised that matter immediately upon my appointment as opposition leader when I got my instrument at Knowsley. The first reaction from the Prime Minister was that she accepted my position. And her first public statement then was that Mr. Warner will do what is required under the circumstances, or with that effect. That means, we took that to mean that he would choose to either retain the portfolio of minister or retain his FIFA executive and choose one to do. When it became clearer to Mr. President that we were seriously insisting that Mr. Warner either choose his cabinet position or his FIFA job, she turned her position then and said that ethics, as she understood it, was work ethic, and that Mr. Warner has a high work rate and a high work ethic, and he will do well to discharge both positions. That was the first action of this Prime Minister in protection and defense of Mr. Warner to the detriment of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That was the beginning, where she indicated that she was prepared to fall on her principles, change her position to give Mr. Warner not the benefit of the doubt, but to put him in a position where he didn't have to comply with the requirements, expectations, and regulations. To justify that, she invoked the assistance of the Attorney General, who then sought senior counsel advice. And it's interesting if we now look back at some of the advice that the senior counsel gave then. One senior counsel confirmed that there was a code of ethics to be observed, and it wasn't enforceable in law. But of course, the mover of the motion in the parliament had made that quite clear, that it was a code of conduct which the parliament was establishing for parliamentarians, not a law with a clause to be breached. And we expected that parliamentarians will subscribe to this code of conduct. So that advice didn't really change anything. One other senior counsel pointed out that, yes, if Mr. Warner was allowed to hold both positions, the one at FIFA could bring benefits to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, this was a senior counsel who was asked to advise on law, but he was advising on benefits to be had by acting improperly. And there was a third senior counsel who advised that he knew of no instance where a member of a Commonwealth cabinet was serving as an executive somewhere else. In the face of all these developments, Mrs. Governor Prasad Bisesa chose to keep Mr. Warner in the cabinet and to defend him. The Prime Minister was not interested in the country's wider interests of protecting our standards against the code of ethics that we agreed to as a parliament. Then later on, having been warned that Mr. Warner's private business at FIFA could take the country and that it could draw Trinidad and Tobago into FIFA's known scandalous arrangements, the Prime Minister turned a blind eye and wasn't interested. Then, right here in Trinidad and Tobago, we had the development of the bribery scandal at the Hyatt. When that story broke, and Mr. Warner's involvement was made known to the country and the international community, there was a strong demand for Mr. Warner to be removed from the cabinet. And this is over and above the legalities of whether Trinidad and Tobago's laws were broken by way of the importation of currency into this country in breach of the Currency Exchange Act. The Prime Minister accepted then that these issues were taking place and that Mr. Warner's presence in the cabinet was something that would attract their attention and should attract their attention. But while the stories were unfolding and FIFA was taking action with and against Mr. Warner and others and doing their investigation, the Prime Minister took a position that she will await the outcome of the FIFA investigation. Once again, the Prime Minister was not prepared to act in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago, but hiding behind somebody else's action. So then we were told that she will await the outcome of the FIFA investigation. What happened? Mr. Warner did not subject himself to the FIFA investigation. He walked away from FIFA without subjecting himself to that investigation. However, an investigation did take place in the Court of Arbitration in Sport. Once again, Mr. Warner failed to cooperate with that investigation. And the court had to proceed based on evidence of Mr. Warner's involvement provided by others and other documentary evidence. But the court didn't have enough evidence to make a position that Mr. Warner had been deemed to be economic with the truth, which in simple language meant that he was a purveyor of falsehoods. And the court observed that and made its finding on him. That did not attract the attention of the Prime Minister, a Prime Minister who was waiting on the outcome of the investigation. While that was so, here in Trinidad and Tobago, the matters became of interest to the police. And the opposition pressed this matter with the police. The next thing we knew is that the Commissioner of Police made a statement in Trinidad and Tobago that the Director of Public Prosecution has vindicated Mr. Warner on a matter where he was alleged to be implicated in the distribution or facilitation of distribution of monies brought into the country, apparently illegally and otherwise. And the DPP was supposed to have made a ruling that Mr. Warner had no case to answer. We, up to this day, knew of no reason or any basis for the Commissioner of Police making that statement to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because when that statement was made, the Director of Public Prosecution had to come out publicly and say, no, I did no such thing. On the contrary, the threadbare file that was produced to me by the police did not allow me to take a decision as to whether action should be taken against A, B, C, or D and Mr. Warner. But what the DPP confirmed to the country is that he had advised the police to direct their investigation into this matter at the Hyatt under the Customs Act of Trinidad and Tobago. In other words, there was an investigation to be done and was taking place under the potential breach of the Customs Act. and the minister was a subject of that investigation. All of this is public information. As I speak to you now, we know of no progress with respect to that investigation, and the fact that the minister was the subject of that investigation was known to the Prime Minister. And there was a whole body of public information coming from evidence and testimonies at the FIFA end, which the Prime Minister ignored. In fact, Mr. Warner, as a member of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, when confronted by a journalist from the United Kingdom and asked questions about his FIFA matter, his conduct was to attempt to spit at the journalist and ask the journalist to consult his mother. That was the behavior of the Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, responding to matters of international interest, where Trinidad and Tobago's image was at risk. And the Prime Minister turned a blind eye to all that. The next thing we know is that a journalist in Trinidad and Tobago, after Mr. Warner left FIFA in a hurry, and there were bodies of information coming out from CONCACAF and from FIFA, that the Center of Excellence in Trinidad and Tobago was a subject of interest with respect to who owns it and who operated it, and Mr. Warner's interest and involvement in it. A journalist in Trinidad and Tobago put to Mr. Warner a specific question as to whether he had any interest, beneficial interest, in the Center of Excellence. Mr. Warner, without batting an eyelid, reported to the journalist, but soon after CONCACAF made moves to take ownership of the property, Mr. Warner, the same Mr. Warner, Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, member of the cabinet, came out publicly to defend his property and told the media and the country that that property is owned by his family for over 20 years as a gift from Yao Havilange, and that matter is still an ongoing matter between FIFA, CONCACAF, and the Warners. And since then, it had been made public to all of us, including the Prime Minister, that the property is either owned, operated, mortgaged, whatever, by a company called Renra, where the beneficiaries are the Warner family, including the Minister and his son, as owners and directors of the property. So all of this information is available to the Prime Minister, who turns a blind eye to it, because she has put this minister beyond the reach of any arm of principle, discipline, or of public interest. The next thing we know is that the United States authorities are conducting an investigation, and our information here at this end is that it's a RICO investigation, racketeering. And if you're familiar with RICO in the United States, you understand what that means. And one of the people involved in that is the son of the Minister of National Security. And bear in mind that I'm not now talking about the Minister of Works. The Minister of Works has been promoted to the National Security Council and now holds the post of National Security Minister in the face of all that I just told you. And it is widespread information that the US authorities have turned their attention to the alleged criminal conduct of persons who may have breached US laws. Very serious criminal allegations. Our information is that the allegations are fraud, violation of Customs Act, money laundering, and a variety of other things. And these are allegations. And the allegations were that they involved the business of the family of the minister. Now, I can't understand how a prime minister could expect a country to have information like this and not expect that the citizens of this country will want to know the extent to which the public business is intertwined with the private business of the people who are of interest to the US authorities. So the Prime Minister is totally oblivious to all of this. And I want to read for you what is in the newspaper over the weekend. So now, what we knew since last November, we in the opposition since last November, knew this was going down in the United States. The press knew about it about the same time and started asking pertinent questions. The response of the Minister of National Security, who is alleged to be involved in some way in this matter, the response of the minister is to tell the press, just touch it, call it the name, and I will sue you to thy kingdom come, and I will get rich from suing you. In other words, a minister of government in Trinidad and Tobago, who clearly has questions to answer to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, is taking the position that I am going to say to you. And the Prime Minister is not interested in that. And this goes on December, January, February, March. So in March, while the local media was treated with contempt by the Minister of National Security of Trinidad and Tobago, the story is now carried by a foreign newspaper. And we are now told from Reuters that there are these investigations taking place. There's no new information. It's the same information that the local media had and treated with contempt. So let's go through. Now that the story comes out in Reuters, the Prime Minister, like Willie Minky, has not just woken up. And let's take it step by step. Witness. In a US investigation, we now get from the Prime Minister the following. She immediately instructed, and I'm quoting here from the Sunday Express of 31st March, PM trying to confirm what the facts are. So it's only now that the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who had this matter on her plate of the conduct of Mr. Warner and his private business, and the threat that it posed to the people of Trinidad and Tobago public business since June of 2010, and having made herself protector of Mr. Warner since then, it is only now that the story is breaking, because we just get in the beginning of it. In Reuters news coming out of the United States, the Prime Minister, she immediately instructed the Foreign Affairs Minister to pursue the matter through diplomatic channels. Now bear in mind, this is the Prime Minister saying to us that she is now immediately going to pursue this matter through diplomatic channels. Question: what was happening before? Is it that while everybody else knew that something was happening and something very serious happening, that the Prime Minister did not receive from our established channels and from officers of state information as to whether in fact this matter was what it was being said to be? And it is only when Reuters published the story that the Prime Minister is now going to be telling the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Attorney General to find out if anything is going on here. So what was the Prime Minister's interest before? And I dare say, it was the same stance as it was before on all the Jack Warner matters. Pretend not to understand it, pretend not to know, and in the ignorance, protect Mr. Warner's position. That's what the Prime Minister was doing. But now that the story has broken in Reuters, and the whole world is seeing that Trinidad and Tobago could be harboring in the cabinet persons who have serious questions to answer with allegations that could not be more damaging to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Only then the Prime Minister is now instructing a slumberful Ministry of Foreign Affairs and an Attorney General who has been known to be hyperactive. All of a sudden it takes a Reuters story which simply says that young Darren Warner is a cooperating witness, and that is what triggers the government's actions. And then it goes on to say, the Prime Minister said, and I'm quoting the paper, she's quoting now, she further directed the Attorney General to write to Eric Holder directly to seek his personal intervention in the matter so that there can be official confirmation of the facts and circumstances surrounding the alleged investigation. Now, this is the same Eric Holder who the Prime Minister was standing next to, spent time with. And our Prime Minister, you must remember, is chairman of a serious arm of regional security through CARICOM. Chairman. She is at a meeting in Haiti, spending time in the presence of Eric Holder. She must have known before then that her minister was alleged to be the subject of a U.S. criminal investigation. That based on the Reuters report, she is now asking A.G. Ramlogan to write to Mr. Holder. One has to conclude that when she was standing or sitting in the presence of Mr. Holder out there in Haiti for all these hours and days, that she never raised with him the fact that one of her ministers might be the subject of a U.S. investigation, and could he indicate to her? Is that what the Prime Minister is telling Trinidad and Tobago? That when she was in a position, in his presence, with the authority of CARICOM and the Prime Ministerial position, she did absolutely nothing because she had no interest. But only when Reuters spoke about young Darrell's witness status, we now have a letter going to Mr. Holder to ask him whether in fact there's something that they're interested in with the Minister of National Security of Trinidad and Tobago. That is what the Prime Minister wants us to believe. The opposition's position is one of two things. Either the Prime Minister is guilty of gross dereliction of duty, or she is once again guilty of pretending not to know the circumstances surrounding the business of Jack Warner, so as to allow him to continue to function as a minister of cabinet. Either or. And then he goes on. The Prime Minister said, and I'm quoting, she's being quoted in the Express, "It would be premature, if not prejudicial, for me to act without any official clarification or confirmation from the U.S. authorities on this controversial and sensitive matter." What is the Prime Minister telling us? That the only way she could act on this matter, where a minister of government is alleged to be involved in problems involving his business partner and his son, serious criminal allegations, that the only way she could act is if she received written confirmation from a foreign state. Has it occurred to the Prime Minister that the first and best information that she could have for the people of Trinidad and Tobago is to put it directly to Mr. Warner and get an answer from Mr. Warner? Because whatever Mr. Warner says to the Prime Minister would become part of the evidence base. Because if he says to her now that he has no interest in this matter, he is not a subject in this matter, could never be a subject in this matter, that is important for the Prime Minister to know. But bear in mind that the Prime Minister has not been able to tell this country that she has put this matter to the Minister of National Security, and he has confirmed to her that he is in no way, peripheral or otherwise, to be concerned about this matter. What the Prime Minister told us prior to the Reuters story breaking was that she has made polite inquiries which have provided her with no information to cause her to act. What is a polite inquiry? When the allegation is that our Minister of National Security could be the subject of serious allegations of serious criminal conduct in a foreign country. How polite are the inquiries? How truthful are the answers? What exactly is the answer? And until we get answers to all of these, the Prime Minister is bracing and covering up the business of Jack Warner and his associates so as not to be able to act. It is unacceptable that the Prime Minister could be aware of the allegations, be aware of the history, have the information that's in the public domain, and talk to us about polite inquiries bearing no fruit, and would only kick into action when there's a Reuters report about a cooperating witness, possibly the son of the minister. And by the way, he's not just the son of the minister, he's the minister's business partner. And that alone makes his problems the minister's problem. The Prime Minister is talking to us. She is equally mindful, quoting her here, that the commitment to the rule of law requires balance and respect for the presumption of innocence. She has promised to make an informed decision on this matter once the facts are established. What is the yardstick that the Prime Minister is using to determine that the facts are established? You must remember, I was involved, so I know. When the charge was being led against Calder Hart and Patrick Manning, according to the Prime Minister's position now, were the facts established? Or is it that we had sufficient information to determine that what was happening was unacceptable and that these people ought to be held accountable and certain actions ought to take place? The Prime Minister, as opposition leader then, was leading the charge, demanding resignations, demanding arrest and jail time for people all over the place. But now all of a sudden, sitting in her cabinet, in the current situation, the Prime Minister now is talking about commitment to the rule of law and presumption of innocence and promising to act when the facts are established. Am I to understand that until a court of law allows cross-examination in a trial and rule that somebody is guilty and is convicted of an offense, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago will take no action because she's committed to the rule of law and the presumption of innocence? Because the presumption of innocence will continue all the way through the trial until the bench rules that you have been determined to be guilty. What is the Prime Minister saying to us in Trinidad and Tobago? Is that on this specific matter of Jack Warner, these are now the rules. And you have to ask yourself, are these the same rules that applied before? Or are these the rules that only apply when Jack Warner is involved? And then we get this most interesting statement in the same article from our Attorney General. Remember I told you a while ago, the Prime Minister is saying to us that immediately upon hearing about the cooperating witness, she instructed Foreign Affairs and the AG to get things rolling to find out. And what does the AG tell us in the same article? The Attorney General admitted, and hear what he admits to. The government has been exhausting all diplomatic channels with the US government. Now, what is the truth? What is the truth? On one hand, you have the Prime Minister saying, now that I've heard about this cooperating witness, I have immediately instructed that these channels be open to get information. But then the man who she instructs to get the information is telling us that the government has already exhausted all diplomatic channels with the US government. What is the truth? What is the truth? But you must bear in mind that this is the same Attorney General who was detailed to get the information at the NP scandal of bid rigging, instructed by the Prime Minister. It's the same Attorney General who was instructed to investigate Mary King's involvement in the award of a contract in the ministry. Now he's instructed to get information from the US government. And even before the instruction is carried out, according to the Prime Minister, he is reporting to the press, quoted here, that the government has been exhausting all diplomatic channels with the US government. And then he goes on to advise us. The AG said, when a response is forthcoming and when the facts are established, I have no doubt that the government will deliberate on the matter and take a position. So in other words, they have given us an indefinite time frame and a yardstick of when the facts are established. But more interestingly, we're talking here about the presence of a minister in the cabinet. The presence of a minister in the cabinet is a matter for the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister only. It is not a matter for deliberation by the government, and then the government decides if the minister should stay in the cabinet. That job, that responsibility lies with the Prime Minister. And under our Westminster system, it is the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister alone who has to make the determination as to whether the presence of the minister is detrimental to the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And based on what is happening, it is the Prime Minister's determination that the minister's presence should continue or not continue. Not a matter for a court of law waiting for a man to be charged and be found guilty. It is whether, in fact, the perception is damaging us, whether the trial is going to damage us. The Prime Minister has to make that call. So they're now telling us they're waiting on the facts, but they're not telling us what facts they're waiting on. And you must remember, it's the same Prime Minister who was waiting on the outcome of the FIFA investigation. But when the investigation determined that Mr. Warner will not cooperate, that was the end of that. And as we stand now, what they're telling us is unless they get a letter from the US government addressed to the Prime Minister and probably stamped with the US Eagle, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago cannot and will not act in a situation where the country's image is being severely damaged by the current development of Mr. Warner's private business and his presence in public life in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, once again, the Prime Minister is hiding behind somebody else, where her responsibility is what the circumstances is calling it to be. So she's now hiding behind the Attorney General, who is going to be hiding behind an investigation that's going to come to him from somebody else who may or may not respond. And he says, we appreciate the seriousness of the allegation. We appreciate the implications and ramifications, but we equally appreciate the fact that there's a presumption of innocence. What does that mean? That persons who are calling for the removal of the Minister of National Security, we are in fact, according to them, we are in fact being like a kangaroo court. This is not a matter, it's not a court matter. This is not a court matter. And the Prime Minister must understand this is not a court matter. This is a matter of ethics once again. It's a matter of ethics. Should a person be in the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago while being the subject of a criminal investigation, either local or foreign? And the person who is in the best position to answer that question is the minister talking to the Prime Minister. What the Prime Minister is trying to get us to understand is that the established fact that the minister's son is talking to the foreign authorities about criminal matters is unknown to the minister. So the minister is not in a position to ask his son, what are they talking to you about? What are we involved in? What are they interested in? No. This conversation does not take place between the minister and his son. So the minister is not in a position to tell the Prime Minister